times will I tell you? Leave that Yahoo boy alone. You're just jealous. Get back here. Doctor, come and look at this can again. That is not a baby. It's a goat.
They say the devil doesn't knock on your door himself. He sends someone you already trust. Someone who knows your name. Someone who laughs at your jokes. Someone who was sitting right next to you when you ignored every warning your mother ever gave you. Titi didn't die because she was stupid. She died because she was hungry. Hungry for a life that came in a Mercedes with tinted windows and a man who smelled like cologne and currency. She ignored her father's voice. She laughed at her mother's tears. And the whole time, her best friend Sandra was sitting beside her, smiling, watching, and collecting her payment in silence. This is not a ghost story. This is something worse. This is a story about what happens when the people who love you most are drowned out by the people who want something from you. By the time Titi understood that, she was already an ingredient. You have to understand something about Titi before you judge her. She was not a bad girl. She was a beautiful girl in a small house with a big imagination. 23 years old, skin like polished mahogany, laughed so loud it filled every room. She was the kind of girl who walked into a party and everyone turned. Her father, Mr. Balogun, was a retired school teacher, honest man, clean hands, the type of man who pressed his trousers every morning even when there was nowhere to go. He raised Titi with rules, with warnings, with prayers that started at 5 in the morning and didn't stop until the sun was fully up. Her mother, Mrs. Balogun, sold fabric at the market. She was soft, she was tired, but she loved Titi the way only a mother who has struggled can love, desperately, loudly, with both hands. Titi loved them back, but she was ashamed of them. And that shame, that quiet, poisonous shame, was the door Lex walked through. Because Lex was everything Mr. Balogun was not. Lex drove a black Mercedes with windows so dark you couldn't see inside. He wore watches that cost more than Mr. Balogun's entire pension. He spoke English with a kind of confidence that made people move out of his way. When Lex showed up at Sandra's house party and locked eyes with Titi across the room, he didn't walk to her immediately. He waited. He let her notice him first. That was the first move in a game Titi didn't know she was playing. Lex was 28. He had money that nobody could explain. His house had a gate, an actual gate with a guard who saluted. He had never mentioned a job. He had never mentioned a struggle. He had only ever mentioned Titi.
It's so good to see you.
And Titi, starved for something she couldn't name, fell completely. The power was never balanced, not even for 1 second. Here is what nobody told Titi. Sandra had met Lex 6 months before she introduced him to Titi. 6 months. She hadn't introduced him as a potential boyfriend. She hadn't introduced him as a danger. She had introduced him as my friend. He's cool. Just come to his party. But before that party, 3 weeks before, Sandra had sat in Lex's car in the dark, parked behind a filling station, and had a conversation that would seal Titi's fate. Lex had looked at Sandra very calmly and said, I need a girl, young, beautiful, no husband, no children, very fertile, somebody who will not ask too many questions. Sandra asked, what happens to her? And Lex said, she will be fine, she will enjoy herself, but it will just take a while for her to understand. Sandra asked, how long? Lex said, 9 months, maybe less. Sandra did not ask what happened at the end of 9 months. She took the envelope he slid across the dashboard. She counted the money inside. She nodded. She went home. She called Titi. She said, I met someone you need to meet. He's different. He's exactly your type. That was the original sin, not Titi's vanity, not her disobedience, not her hunger for luxury. The original sin was Sandra sitting in that car, counting money and deciding that her own safety was worth more than her best friend's life. And the cruelest part, Sandra came to every date. She cheered from the sidelines. She held Titi's hand when Titi gushed about how wonderful Lex was. She helped Titi pick outfits for the sleepovers. She never flinched, never warned, never looked away. She smiled through all of it. Because the referral fee had included one condition. If Sandra ever warned Titi, the debt would return to her own womb. Sandra chose silence, and Titi paid the price. The first sleepover happened in month 2 of the relationship. Titi came home glowing. She told her mother that Lexi's guest room had a bathroom bigger than their entire flat. She said the sheets smelled like something from a magazine. She said he had actually cooked. Her mother listened quietly. Then she asked one question. Did you drink anything he gave you? Titi rolled her eyes so hard her mother heard it. Mommy, stop. What Titi did not mention, every night at Lexi's house before bed, he brought her a glass of red wine on a small tray. Always red, always warm, always from a bottle he opened himself in a room she couldn't see. She always slept deeply at his house, unusually deeply, the kind of sleep where you don't move, where you don't dream, where morning comes and you feel like someone took advantage of you in the night. She thought it was the mattress. In month 2, Titi noticed the first missing item, a pair of her unwashed underwear, expensive ones she had bought herself, just gone. She checked her bag 3 times. She texted Lex. He laughed. He sent a heart emoji and said, "Babe, you always lose things. I'll buy you 10 more pairs." He did. He sent a Jumia package the next morning. 20 pairs, silk, lace, beautiful. But the new ones kept disappearing too. Always after a sleepover, always the unwashed ones. Titi told Sandra. Sandra said, maybe they are falling behind the bed. And then Sandra changed the subject very quickly. By month 4, Mr. Balogun had started watching Lexi's social media. He didn't tell Titi this. He sat in the small sitting room every evening after his wife slept, and he scrolled on Lexi's Instagram on his old phone with the cracked screen, squinting at the photos. The cars, the trips, the bottles, the money. Mr. Balogun was not a man of the internet, but he was a man who had lived long enough to know that wealth without explanation is not wealth, it is debt. He found something one night, a photo from 2 years ago, Lex standing in front of a building in a town 3 hours away, a small crowd around him. Mr. Balogun didn't recognize the building at first. Then he did. It was a shrine, not the kind they show in movies, no dramatic lighting, no skulls on sticks, just a quiet mud-walled compound with a specific red symbol above the entrance that Mr. Balogun recognized from his childhood, from the stories the old men used to tell about certain families in the village. His hands went cold. He called Titi. She didn't answer. He called again. She picked up on the 5th ring, voice annoyed, a man's laugh somewhere. She said, "Daddy, I'm busy. What is it?"
Hello?
He said,
there?
"Titi,
Please,
I need
pick
you
up.
to
It's
come
urgent.
home. Tonight,
I need to
right
know you're
now."
safe.
She said, "Daddy, I'm at a dinner. I'll come Sunday." He
Hello?
said,
Are you
"Titi,
there?
please, something is
Please,
wrong
pick
with
up.
that
It's
boy."
urgent.
There was
I
a
need to
pause.
know you're
Then
safe.
she said something that would stay with Mr. Balogun for the rest of his life. She said, "Daddy, you are just angry because he has what you never gave us, you God-forsaking poor man." And she hung up. And across the table from her, Lex watched her face with a small smile. He reached across the table and touched her hand, and he said to her softly, "Your father needs to relax. You are safe with me." And she believed him. Month 5. Titi's stomach was showing. She was terrified. She hadn't told anyone except Sandra, and Sandra had said very quickly, very calmly, "Just tell him, he'll be happy. Men like Lex want heirs." Titi thought about what her mother would say, what her father would say. She thought about the shame of it. Then she thought about Lexi's gait, his guard who saluted, his warm wine. She told Lex over dinner. He was quiet for a moment, then he smiled,
okay. We
then
all
he
make
reached into his jacket and
you.
pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a gold necklace, thick, heavy, the kind that cost more than a house in an estate. He placed it around her neck himself. He said, "This is what I've been waiting for." Titi cried. She thought it was from happiness. But here is what the you need to understand right now. Titi's stomach at month 5 looked like month 8. She had gone to a private clinic. The doctor had looked at the scan and looked at it again.
everything okay?
He had asked her how many months she said. She said 5. He had looked at her in a way she didn't understand and said, "That's not possible."
Keep moving.
She told
We're
Lex
almost
about
there.
this. He said,
Okay,
"Change
I'm
the
with
doctor.
you."
That man doesn't know
Good.
what he's doing."
Stay
She
close.
changed the doctor. The new doctor said
test
nothing
results are
unusual.
excellent. Your
He
baby's growth
smiled,
is
he gave her
perfect. Oh, thank
vitamins, he
goodness.
took
Keep up
money
the good
from the
work. See
envelope
you next
Lex
month.
had brought to the appointment. Titi did not ask where that envelope came from. That night, she felt it for the first time, something inside her that moved differently, not a kick, not a flutter, something that chewed. Month 6, Lex's phone was off. Not busy, not ringing out, off. Titi went to the house. The gate guard was gone. The gate itself was slightly open. She pushed it and walked up the path she had walked dozens of times, past the flowers, past the imported paving stones, and stood at the front door. It was unlocked. Inside, the house was empty. Not robbed empty, not moved out empty, erased empty. No furniture, no curtains, no food in the kitchen, no smell of his cologne. Just bare walls and a floor that had been swept clean, and chalk. On every wall, on the floor, on the ceiling above the bedroom where she had slept. Symbols, numbers, names, words she couldn't read. In the corner of the bedroom, she found one thing, a small pile of fabric. She knelt down and touched it. It was her underwear. All of it, every pair that had ever gone missing, folded neatly in a pile, in the corner of the room, in the house she had abandoned, like a receipt. Her phone buzzed. She thought it was Lex. It was Sandra, who said, "Titi, where are you? Call me." Titi called. Sandra's voice was strange, tight, like someone reading from a script. Sandra said, "Forget about Lex. He's not a good person. Come back. Come home." Titi said, "Sandra, did you know?" Silence. Long silence. Then Sandra said, "Come home, please. We can talk." And in that silence, in that 3-second gap between the question and the answer, Titi understood everything. Every party, every introduction, every "he is exactly your type," every time Sandra had changed the subject when the underwear went missing, every time Sandra had been the one pouring the wine. Titi's legs gave out. She sat on the floor, in the chalk marks, in the empty room, with her pile of stolen fabric beside her. Her stomach moved, and whatever moved inside her, it was not a baby. They rushed Titi to St. Emmanuel General Hospital at 2 in the morning. Mrs. Balogun had found her on the floor of the sitting room, shaking, stomach convulsing, biting her own lip, trying not to scream. Mr. Balogun carried her to the car himself. This man, this old, tired, poor and old-fashioned man that Titi had been so ashamed of, carried his daughter in both arms down 3 flights of stairs without stopping. The emergency ward nurses moved fast at first. Then the scanning machine made a sound it was not supposed to make. The radiologist called the doctor. The doctor looked at the image. He called another doctor. They stood together looking at the screen and nobody spoke. One nurse, a young woman named Grace, who had worked 5 years in that ward and had seen things, stepped back from the machine, hit the wall behind her and began to pray under her breath. Because the scan showed a head, but the head had no human shape, and where hands should be, there were joints that bent the wrong way, and at the base of the skull, 2 small protrusions, blunt, dense, growing. The doctor looked at Titi's face and made a decision he would never be able to explain in any medical report. He leaned close to her and he said quietly, "Is there someone you need to call? Right now, is there someone?" Titi grabbed his wrist. Her grip was stronger than it should have been. She said, "Call my father. Tell him I'm sorry." The doctor stepped into the hallway to make the call. He did not go back into that room for 4 minutes. When he returned, the nurses were screaming. Titi was screaming, but it was not the scream of pain. It was the scream of someone who finally, completely understood what had happened to them. The scream of a girl who replayed every moment, every glass of wine, every missing item, every sleeping night she couldn't account for, and arrived at the truth all at once. The labor lasted 11 minutes. Inside the room, the doctors backed away from the bed. What lay on the sheets was black, entirely black and small and wrong. It made a sound that was not a cry. It turned its head. It looked at the doctor with eyes that were not animal and were not human. On his left side, just below the shoulder, was a birthmark, shaped exactly like the one Lex had on his right forearm. The thing moved. It slid off the bed. It found the floor. It moved towards the door with a speed that made the nurses press themselves against the walls. The creature walked through the corridor. It walked through the lobby. It walked through the hospital's front door into the rain. It walked through the streets in the dark, in the rain, past the market stalls with their closed shutters, past the filling station, past the junction where Titi used to wait for Lexi's Mercedes. It walked to the river and it jumped. The water swallowed it completely. No splash, no ripple, just a river and then silence. Titi died at 3:47 in the morning. The official cause of death written on the certificate was complications during labor. No doctor signed it willingly. At 4:02 a.m., Sandra sent a text to Titi's phone, the phone that was sitting on the bedside table in the now empty hospital room. The text said, "I am so sorry. I had no choice. Please forgive me." At 4:15 a.m., Lex posted to TikTok. A yellow Lamborghini, sunshine, his face split open in a grin. Caption, "New year, new blessings, new girl, sacrifice is the key to success." He tagged the location as Dubai. At Titi's burial, Sandra wore black lace and dark glasses. She held Mrs. Balogun's hand through the whole service. She cried loudly. She said in front of everyone, "She was my sister, my best friend." At the reception, a girl from the neighborhood walked up to Sandra and said, "At least she died wearing designer." And Sandra said nothing, because she was already thinking about what she would wear to the next party, the one Lex had already texted her about, and who she will bring next. The river was quiet for 2 days. On the third morning, the fishermen noticed something wrong. The current was running backward, not slowing, not stopping, running backward, upstream, against everything water is supposed to do. The old fishermen dropped their nets. They had seen floods. They had seen drought. They had seen the river run brown with soil after heavy rain. They had never seen this. They called the others. By morning, 40 people stood on the bank watching the river move the wrong way, and nobody had words for it. Then a woman screamed. On the bank, on the mud at the edge of the water, there was a child. A real child, a baby, newborn by the looks of it, wrapped in something dark, lying in the mud, breathing. The woman who found him said the baby was not crying. He was looking at her, fully, directly, with Titi's exact eyes, wide, dark, warm. She reached down to lift him, and he did something no newborn does. He smiled, and then he made a sound, not a cry, not a coo, a laugh, low, slow, familiar. The woman stepped back. She had heard that laugh before, not from this child, not from this riverbank, but from a video, a TikTok video, a yellow Lamborghini, a man in sunglasses, and on his left side, just below the shoulder, a birthmark that had no business being on a child this new to the world. He had been born once already, and whatever sent him back, it was not finished. That same afternoon, 300 kilometers away in Dubai, Lex woke up from a deep sleep, sat up in his hotel bed and looked at the wall. Just looked for a long time. Then he picked up his phone. He went to his contacts. He found a name he had not called in 7 years, a man whose number he had never deleted. He called it. The man answered on the first ring. Lex said only 4 words. Something came back out. The line went silent. Then the man said, "I know. I felt it."